Growing a successful business has never been easy. But whether you're navigating a complex industry or trying to reinvent one, our breadth of banking experts are here to collaborate on market-proven solutions. At KeyBank, we're built to grow with your changing needs because we're not just here for the business you are now, we're here for the business you'll become. Reimagine business as usual. KeyBank opens doors. Learn more at key.com/B2B.
The first shots were the reporter sort of explaining the story. And then he said, okay, I'm going to go over to Krishna in a bathtub because we couldn't afford Margot Robbie to explain it. And there's a local beer that's beloved called Natty Bo. And he's drinking a beer in the bathtub with the shirt on. And he sort of leads you through it. And that video generated a ton of click-through and subscription starts. Like it was the unicorn where there's the funnel and you're like, okay, here's how it should work. And it so rarely works exactly like that or so clearly. And this was an instance where social video was really contributing to the subscription starts for that story in a big way.
This is Small Press, Big Ideas, a podcast about the business of local news in the United States. I'm your host, Paul Gewertz. Small Press Big Ideas is about the opportunities and challenges that local news publishers are facing for their businesses. I'll sit down and talk with journalists, entrepreneurs, nonprofit leaders, and more in the local news industry to find out what's working, what isn't, and how the local news ecosystem can innovate and flourish in the 21st century. All right, my guest today is TJ Ortenzi. He's the Deputy Managing Editor of Audience and Digital at the Baltimore Banner, which I was just saying before we were live. It's just been popping up in my world more and more all the time. So I'm excited to talk to you. TJ, thanks for being here. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah. If we could just set the stage, if you could just tell us, it's our first time meeting, tell myself and the audience just a little bit about your background and kind of your career. I'll let you take it from there.
I went to school in New Orleans, and one day as a freshman, I was crossing the campus and they were doing auditions for something called BurboCam, where you were interviewing drunk people on Bourbon Street. And I auditioned and I got it. And that's where I met I met a mentor there. She was sort of running the whole thing, and her name was Corey Hike. And Katrina happened. After Katrina, she was like, oh, you should come work for me. She was working for NOLA.com. And so I wanted to go into TV news, but I thought I'll follow her and see what it's like. And I sort of learned the power of a breaking news alert and how exciting it was that was a time when people in New Orleans were all gone. And that's sort of when I realized web and digital news was for me. From there, I took a web producer job in Seattle at the Seattle Times. And from there, I went to HuffPost in New York. And this was when Arianna Huffington was really involved with it. Then I was at the Washington Post for about 11 years. And I'd lived in Baltimore for most of that time and had always wanted a Baltimore journalism job, but I never wanted to work for the company that owned The Sun at the time. So I was following very closely when a guy named Stuart Bynum tried to buy Tribune and lost out on that. And when the Banner started, I tried to get here as soon as I could.
Very cool. That's funny with BurboCam. I'm not speculating on your age, but you must have been pretty early. That's like a whole genre on like Instagram now of people just out interviewing drunk people. It's great entertainment. I love that stuff.
It was, I can't believe we were doing streaming video in like 2004, but yeah.
Oh, wow. It's streaming. Yeah, that's a super early. Very cool. You kind of talked a little bit there about wanting to, work at a publication in Baltimore, and then kind of alluded to the Banner, and I mentioned it before. Could you just talk a little bit? You're the first person from the Banner I've had on. Could you just talk a little bit about that publication, maybe a little bit of its history? I know you guys get a lot of kudos around the space for what you're doing as a, like a nonprofit covering Baltimore, but I'd like if you could just kind of frame that out a bit for us.
Yeah, there's a businessman and philanthropist named Stuart Bynum, and he, a friend. From what I understand, he came to believe that one of the best ways to give back, to sort of amplify an initial gift, was to create journalism. And so he got really serious about what it would take to launch a news organization. He pursued an acquisition of the Baltimore Sun, and they were owned by Tribune, and they said, okay, you have to acquire all of our papers. So he put together a bid, and he lost out on that to Alden Capital, which is one of the big hedge funds. And he said, okay, I'm going to do my own thing. I'm going to start my own news organization. I was curious before, but when I found out that he was going to launch his own thing, that's the sort of like, I'm a petty person. I can be petty. And I loved that sort of like, watch me, I'm gonna do this. Yeah. So it also meant that for many years I'd been commuting an hour and a half plus one way to go into work, and I was excited to now my commute's like 15 minutes. And it's different when the idea of sending out like a breaking news alert to a place where you live and that affects the people you know is a different feeling from when you're at a national organization doing stuff that sort of it's for everybody versus your specific neighborhood.
Yeah, and that's definitely a big kind of a thing that comes up a lot on this show. I like the pettiness angle, especially when it's against somebody like Alden Global Capital, like those vultures. But I do like that also. So the next kind of thing I had pulled up, the reason I sent this question to you is I've asked a number of people on this podcast in the local media space, and usually the answer I get is, let me know when somebody has a good answer for you, because it's a really hard one. But I saw, just kind of going through LinkedIn, that you oversee both social media and newsletters at the Banner, which is kind of rented audience, if you want to say, on social media, and owned audience via email. So I was curious if you have any tips for local media people, anything you've learned of getting social followers to leave the platform and subscribe to a newsletter. It's like this question has come up like 5 or 10 times on this show, and nobody has a great answer to it. But I'd like to get your take on it.
So our marketing department, as a new news organization, we've had to invest in awareness and making sure people know us. We have a really successful social media team, and that's how many people come to find out who we are. Our sort of like main social video anchor, his name is Krishna Sharma. He has become like, he is the face of the Banner. And we said, I wonder what would happen if we had Krishna promote our newsletters or our local county level alerts. So we got with our marketing team, and he wrote a script, and he was the one, he did the whole video himself. And we did it that way so that it was just organic and it would feel very much his own, and people would connect with it. And then we put paid marketing behind it, and it performed better than the other forms of paid social that the marketing team had been doing. So we repeated that with our sports social guy, and it's something that we will continue to do more of. But those were real leads. And then another thing is, we had a big story about, it's a type of loan called DSCR. And it's basically the barrier for you to get a loan is just, you have to show that whatever property you're acquiring, how much rental income you can expect to generate with that loan. And there are some investors who are accused of abusing it, and they bought up large swaths of vacant properties in Baltimore, and then they sort of skipped out on paying the loans according to the lenders. And that means that the lenders have sort of locked down who's allowed to invest, like how many loans they're offering, they're willing to give out for those properties. So it's this group of investors who are indirectly hurting a large swath of Baltimore because there's less capital coming their way. It's a very dry story on its face, but Krishna got with the reporters, and it reminded them a lot of the Michael Lewis Big Short stuff. And there's a scene from the movie, which is of course based on the book, where Margot Robbie is sitting in a bathtub, and she's talking about how to get rich with this scheme. And so they said, oh, let's do it. Let's explain it that way.
Oh, really?
Krishna's a good-looking guy. We had the reporter on camera. I feel proud that we didn't lead with Krishna in the bathtub. So the first shots were the reporter sort of explaining the story, and then he said, okay, I'm going to go over to Krishna in a bathtub, because we couldn't afford Margot Robbie to explain it. And there's a local beer that's beloved called Natty Bo, and he's drinking a beer in the bathtub with the shirt on, and he sort of leads you through it. And that video generated a ton of click-through and subscription starts. Like it was the unicorn where there's the funnel and you're like, okay, here's how it should work. And it so rarely works exactly like that or so clearly. And this was an instance where social video was really contributing to the subscription starts for that story in a big way.
I love examples like that. I had not seen that. I'm going to have to dig that up. Maybe I can link to it in the episode. That is such a fantastic use of, combines everything that I try to bring it up in this show. The thing with local news is when it disappears in an area, that's when corruption goes through the roof, which is exactly what the dry story you said is. It's important to cover. But then actually meeting people where they are on social and just doing something kind of funny, I guess. I don't know, engaging like that with the Margot Robbie bathtub scene.
Yeah.
That's great. I had Oshia Boyd on here from Mirror Indie in Indianapolis.
Mm-hmm.
And they had it's not quite the same. It wasn't like an investigative thing, but they had this really cool video up on YouTube to introduce their newsroom. That's basically like a Full House, 90s style sitcom intro with the music and everything. Yeah. I just love cool examples like that. So sorry.
No, that's cool. That's a good idea. That's how you got. That's how you got to do it.
It was really good. They had the fonts down and everything. Really good stuff. Okay, I'd like to maybe dig in a little bit there on the social piece. Something you said kind of early in that, but did you say his name was Krishna? Is that? Yeah, okay.
Krishna Sharma.
Yeah, and you were talking about your sports guy too, or your sports person too.
Paul Mancano.
Okay, yeah. And I think you referred to him as social anchors.
Yeah.
And I know you guys are a good example of this trend that's coming up more and more of journalists being influencers, for lack of a better term, and vice versa, and kind of treading that line and everything. When you say a social anchor, can you talk a little bit about what that means? Because I really doubt it's like somebody in a suit and tie sitting behind a desk with graphics up behind him. Or maybe I'm wrong. But
no.
What's that look like? Yeah.
I think so. The point about meeting people where they are, people don't necessarily want to read a story. Like when the New York Times added so much vertical video to their homepage, I was sort of like, what are they doing? Why are they doing this? Because the videos that they put on their homepage were so not of the platforms where I've become used to seeing vertical video. They were not to their credit, to the Times' credit, they weren't trying to do what everyone else was doing on TikTok or Instagram. It was sort of their own voice. And I was like, this is just too weird. But, I visit their homepage enough and I consume enough of their content that over time, I realized they have habituated me to like and admire the format of the social videos that they have. And it's sort of been I don't know. Now I like it. When I'm presented with a long Times investigation, depending on how interested I am in the subject or how much time I have, I won't read the story. I will just watch the video. And then when I'm talking about the concepts from that video to people in my life, I don't say, I just watched this Times video. I say oh, there was this Times story. And I get out of it exactly what I would get out of having read the story. At least that's how I feel as a consumer. And so I think the social video anchors, it's basically an acknowledgement that influencers and individuals, that is who is driving tons of conversation, tons of time spent for the people that we're trying to reach. And there's something about getting your news from a person or that parasocial relationship. Maybe not, and I don't mean parasocial in the most negative. I don't mean it in a negative way. I just mean it's the same reason why local news anchors on TV have been trying to connect with audiences on a first name basis for years and years. So a social anchor is someone who will take the journalism and the story and they will find a very approachable, interesting way to tell it. And it's just another opportunity to take the lens of an audience editor and sort of apply it to complex reporting so that you can break down complex ideas or further help that audience feel heard and seen and served.
Blowing ad budget on metrics that look great till the CFO sees them, that's bull spend. And marketers are calling it out in Dashboard Confessions.
I remember telling my boss, it'll be good for the brand, when leads were slow. Yeah, it wasn't.
Cut the bull spend. LinkedIn lets you target by company, job title, and more. Advertise on LinkedIn. Spend $250 on your first campaign and get a $250 credit. Go to linkedin.com/campaign. Terms and conditions apply.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of kind of hemming and hawing, I think, of with social media. Social media platforms definitely have their own issues. That's a whole different podcast. But in the journalism world, of people saying like, no, that's not journalism. That's not how we do. But it's like the thing I always think of is there's this story of, I think it's from like Plato's time, the philosopher, I'm not sure what you call him, the ancient Greek, and he's talking about some old men, and they're saying, they're writing everything down in these books now. These new generations aren't going to remember anything. And it's just like this kind of thing that just constantly, now we're like, vertical video, like what is this? This isn't real journalism. So I applaud you guys for kind of taking that on. I want to dig in a little more. You got my curiosity going now, because you guys are such a good example on the social front. So with these social anchors, they're employees of the Banner. Are they posting through their personal accounts? Is it through like the Banner's, the social media? How does all that work?
So it's all, it's a little bit of a mix. So we've got three social video anchors. We've got Krishna Sharma, who's sort of like, he creates social video for the main account. We've got a sports guy, Paul Mancano. He sort of runs social video for our sports accounts. And then we have Rondez Green. So the Banner expanded to Montgomery County, which is, if you're talking about spheres of influence in this region, there's DC and Baltimore, and we're only about an hour apart. So the counties in between, there's sort of a dividing line where the cultural center of gravity is Baltimore, and then the other part is the cultural gravity center is DC. And Montgomery County is a lot closer to that DC area. So he creates that. When they create videos, Rondez in collabs with his own personal account. Krishna and Paul do not. To them, you're welcome to add your personal account. I think the value that they create is very real. And if they were to go out and do this on their own, they probably could there's a scenario where they could make more money, or they could not. But
right.
What we're able to offer is a paycheck, health insurance. There's a volatility that comes along with being an influencer and an entrepreneur, that the trade-off for them is they don't necessarily they can do good work without worrying about that volatility. There are trade-offs for that, but we get a lot from their contributions.
Yeah, I was going to ask that too, but thanks for addressing that, because when you get, help building an audience, you could potentially go make more money. And, I run a small business, and I can attest to the volatility.
Yeah.
It's great. You got agency, and, you can make potentially more money, but there's some stress involved with it for sure. And it's definitely not for everyone. I totally get that.
And the other part there is like, they can connect with our reporters and our journalists and hear it from the source. So it's not that I think a lot of influencers or news influencers, it's a lot, they're reading things and going off of what they read and synthesizing stuff on their own, versus someone like Krishna, Paul, or Rondez. They can go directly to the person who broke the news and get that context.
I would imagine too, I don't know, I'm just spitballing here. I would imagine with them being like their own personality, just with, with the younger generations being on social media and everything, they might might be much better for generating news tips and stuff. If somebody can say you right in the DMs, versus having to go to the site and everything. I hadn't really thought of that, but is that have you seen that also?
Yeah, it's happened before. I think on some of our most serious stories too, we will get tips that we will relay to the editors and the reporters, and that they will make their way into the story. When that happens, we often ask, we'll throw in the social editor's name as a contributor on the story. So yeah, it happens. And you don't know, it's always surprising on the stories that it does happen with. It's just not always what you think it will be.
Kind of unpredictable. Right. Yeah. So one more question, kind of touching on this, the social part. Another theme on the show is sustainability. Are you guys using social media directly for any revenue generating purposes, or is it more like a funnel? You get them to the newsletter. I know you guys are a nonprofit, so I don't know if it's also philanthropy or what's going on there, but curious on that front. Yeah.
So our model, we are a nonprofit, and we have a philanthropy team. We also subscriptions help make us. Mm-hmm. They're one of the biggest ways to get us to become sustainable, and also advertising and events. So social, there are collab posts that are advertising sales team will sometimes sell collaborations with different brands locally, and we will post. It'll be a post that we were going to create and share anyways, but we will collab and tag the client. We don't have a ton of them, and I think it is always you are always having to make the case to your leadership how much value, how much return on their investment they're getting from social. And I think it's been here at the Banner, it's nice that the leadership has seen it. When you go out in the field with someone like Krishna and you're trying to do a man on the street video, it's insane how many people their eyes will light up, or there will be a twinkle in their eye when you approach. And again, this is like in places where you wouldn't necessarily think that they've even, oh, have you heard of us? I don't know if they've heard of us, but this person over there, they know who Krishna is, and they know it because of the Banner.
Huh.
And so leadership does recognize that, and they do. I think all of us and anyone who's ever done audience work or social media in any newsroom has had the difficult experience of trying to explain what the value is and really put a figure to it. And we haven't figured that out by any means, but I think leadership does recognize how special it is to have the kind of engagement that we've been lucky to generate.
Yeah. Very cool. Really good stuff. Okay, I'll pivot a little bit here. Hit to my mandatory AI question. The Banner's kind of a newer publication. It's kind of grown with, since ChatGPT's launch and everything. And then seems like it's really accelerated in the last few months, AI, depending on who you're talking to. Just curious, I like getting everyone's take on the AI, the rise of AI, and how you guys are using it or not using it, or just any thoughts you have on that.
Yeah. So we received I think it was a $400,000 grant from the Lenfest Institute. I think the money comes from Microsoft, and it was to basically we trained AI to read all of our stories that we had published to date and help us categorize them to a standardized method for things like tone or type, and to help us sort of understand which stories were most successful and why. That's one way that we've used it. We have a fellow that money has helped us sustain, who is working on things like early warning signals for breaking news. Today, we wrote a story about this tiny county in Maryland that has, despite it being rural and tiny, it has a high crime rate. And unfortunately, the county can't get the race for state's attorney for their top prosecutor. Like, no one was in the race. The local Republicans recruited someone. So now there's one person running who will obviously win. And the commenters on the story were like, they just were not familiar with the concept that this tiny town had such high crime rate. And someone said, does anybody know why the crime rate is so high? And another commenter said, oh, I plugged it into Copilot and here's what it had to say. And they linked the output from Copilot and shared it with that commenter. And the other commenter replied like, oh, thanks so much. This is fascinating. Like, I didn't know any of this. And I clicked through and I was just watching it and I thought, like, this is exactly what, there's two things. One thing is this is exactly what you want from commenting. You want to have
right in an ideal world,
right? Like everyone was being polite. They were helping one another. It was an exchange that you might see on Reddit. And then the other part was like, I don't know what the idea should be, but I just know that I need to think more about. There's something there about AI and the user's needs, and maybe having a bot scan your previous reporting or scan information that you have verified and previously published and automatically replying when they see a question in the comments that it can answer using all of the reporting that you've done to date. I don't know what it should be, but I thought it was cool that commenters were using AI to sort of go deeper on a story that they were curious about.
Very cool. Yeah, that is a great use case. I wish all comment sections looked like that, because a lot of the ones I end up on do not. That's
right.
For sure.
Right.
So kind of with that last question, this could be hard to answer because things are changing very rapidly right now. But if I ask you to flash forward 5 years, I like to ask everybody, where do you see yourself and the Banner and maybe even like the local media ecosystem? That might be a loaded question, but yeah.
So I see the Banner as not just being sustainable, but profitable. And then, of course, reinvesting that money back into the organization. I see the Banner having a roadmap and a plan to expand even more beyond the counties and regions in Maryland that we already cover. So I guess that would mean parts of Western Maryland, and you'd call it the Eastern Shore. I'd like to see us have an even bigger newsroom with more reporters telling stories about just the interesting, fun culture, business, politics. I think it's, Wes Moore he's our state's governor, and he obviously has national aspirations. I think we're not, we will cover it for Maryland, but covering him makes us sort of experts. And I'm hopeful that the journalism that we're able to do when I expect he does pursue that higher office will help build our profile even more. So yeah, I want the Banner to be, I want to help the Banner figure it out. And when I say figure it out, I want the Banner to help figure out local news, and maybe what we've learned can help other local news publishers or startups.
Yeah, that's a dream. Well, I mean, just shared on based on what you shared with me today, you guys are very innovative, doing some really cool stuff.
We're trying.
I think you're moving in the right direction, and seems like you have a good culture there too. Just the vibe I get from talking to you and talking about your social anchors and the team and everything like that. So, which is also really important. Very cool, man. That's all I've got on the prep. Can wrap this up if you want to just let everybody know where to find you, where to find the Banner, anything you want me to link to or promote in the show notes. Let me know
they can go to thebanner.com, and on social most of our flagship accounts are Baltimore Banner, and I'm on socials as TJ Ortenzi almost everywhere. So yeah, pretty simple. TJ Ortenzi.
Very cool. I'll link to all that. Awesome, TJ. Thank you so much. This is really fun. I appreciate you taking the time. Very cool. You have a good day.
Thanks. You too.
Thank you for listening to Small Press Big Ideas. You can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. If you'd like to help the show, the best thing you can do is to tell a friend or colleague and just take a few minutes to leave a rating and a review on whatever platform you're listening to right now. It only takes a minute out of your day, but it really does help the podcast grow and reach more ears. Check back for new episodes every Monday.
Ready or not, summer is coming, and Wayfair's Memorial Day clearance is on now. Right now through May 25th, get up to 70% off everything home at Wayfair. Plus, score amazing doorbuster deals all sale long and surprise flash deals on Memorial Day. We're talking thousands of products at every style and budget. Now is the time to save big on must-haves for your patio, backyard, and beyond. These savings won't last, so don't wait. Shop Wayfair's Memorial Day clearance now through May 25th.
Wayfair, every style, every home.